Welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight. I'm Judith Grober, and today we are talking to Wayne Steiger. His YouTube channel is R.Wayne Steiger, The Journey, and he is covering a lot of interesting subjects, I have to say. And he caught my attention because he did a very nice series about King Og. And that is what we are going to talk about a little bit today. And I'm very happy to have him here. So, Wayne, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Judith. Thank you for having me. It's a delight and a pleasure. I enjoy particularly talking on some of the subjects that most people don't talk about. So, yeah, thank you for having me on.
Tell me a little bit, how did you embark on all these, let's say, unusual subjects? That is not, has that always been this way, that you had an interest in that from an early age on, or was there a defining moment?
Good question. I've had experiences with the paranormal as a young boy. But for the most part of my life, I was what one would call a Christian, primarily Pentecostal, leaning in that direction. And I was very much one who believed in the gifts of the Spirit, speaking in tongues, and etc. And I guess it was around early in the 90s, I began to have some questions about the faith, but every Christian experiences that. And then I guess it started in 2000 and accelerated particularly about 2011. And at that point I had, quote unquote, my epiphany of awakening to the reality that I had lived my life by. My core collapsed because I found out it was predicated on a false narrative.
Mm-hmm. And then the journey started.
Yeah, and since I was already an individual given to, let's say, thinking outside the box, I've always been an entrepreneur and been a CEO of a lot of different tech companies. So thinking outside the box, philosophy has always been very much akin to me. I've always been a mentor and a teacher. And when the journey really started in earnest, I realized I had spent nearly 50 years of my life in an illusion that I had to realize I had a lot of time I had to make up. And so here I am today, probably one of the few individuals I know that really goes into subject matters that most people would never even venture towards.
Mm-hmm. And can you recall what was the most nagging doubt that was there before you said, enough of this, I have to reconsider everything?
Yeah, 2012, when I realized, and I forget how I got into the study, but when I realized that the letter J did not exist in the original King James 1611 version, and it was Ayus. And Ayus is a direct subname which translates into Zeus. And how they got the J with the IE, theologians go to great lengths trying to explain it. The fact of the matter was, there was never a Jesus. When that hit me, I said, okay, so what's going on here? And I had a good friend introduce me to Philo of Alexandria. Philo was a first century philosopher and historian. And when I read his works, I said, well, we got a real problem here. And that led me down a trail that the second big reality that hit me at the same time, I was doing college work in Sumerian history. And when I began to fit in the Sumerian history to the Abrahamic faith, I said, wait a minute, we got two conflicting ideologies here. And the fact of the matter is that that was another one of those epiphany moments. Bam, it hit me. The standard Genesis story could never have been true because they never mention the Samaritans. But yet, in the book of Zechariah, the Samaritans are mentioned by the prophet Zechariah because Zechariah saw it coming in as a flying saucer, by the way, piloted by two females. And, you know, so, and where did the three main religions today, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, all have the same patriarch, Abraham? Well, where did Abraham come from? Well, he came from Ur in the Chaldees, which was a capital of Sumer.
Mm.
It gets weirder. So why no mention of Enki or Enyel or Anu or Inanna?
Mm.
So, you know, all of a sudden I'm trying to put all these pantheons of deities, but the world today believes primarily in a alien race called the Elohim,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the Elohim's name was Yahweh.
Mm-hmm.
And so those all came together, and I realized that we live in the 21st century in an illusionary reality.
Mm. When you did your King Og series, and now in hindsight, looking back, what was your most surprising takeaway from that?
Was the point of view of the Rephaim.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at the Nephilim and the Rephaim, they're of the same species, but on different tree branches. And Og, in his view of Yahweh, was very it was revealing in the aspect that there was a world here that mankind's memory has been wiped of. We have only fleeting little pieces, but there was a time when the gargantuans ruled this planet. And we call them the fallen angels, the titans. Throughout the pantheons of man's history, we still remember those days when these beings were here and man was nothing more than food.
Mm-hmm. So King Og was a Rephaim, and
Yeah, yeah.
what is the difference between the Nephilim and the Rephaim?
The Nephilim were a human edited gene version. The Rephaim were of what we would call of the angelic race, the divine ones. And the thing that, you know, get back to that question, what I really walked away after doing a study on that, Og understood about gods. And as the Rephaim were coming from around the world for this huge battle, the diversity of the gods that they brought with them could only lead a researcher to a very narrow band of conclusions, and that is man's conception of intelligence is limited by his own arrogance of where he sees himself in the creation itself. It's very evident what Og and what he told Yahweh and the people that served him. He said, you've already written your own demise. He says, I may be killed, but those whom I serve will never be killed. That's one of those cliffhangers. You're going, oh crap. So you know, you're going, okay, well, I hope that they don't come back, you know? And so, yeah, very revealing. And consequently, Judith, the really interesting thing was I did a study, probably the only study out there on the Liber Lilith, probably one of the most oldest books and antiquity that we can actually date. And Lilith, she tells the same story what King Og talks about.
Mm-hmm.
So this reality that we live in today is an illusion. I contend we as a species are under a spell. We see a very limited amount of the spectrum. an intelligent creature that has greater, if let's say into the ultraviolet or into the infrared, you could have a whole reality that we would never even perceive.
Mm.
That's what I got.
So in that series, you also talk about Uvall. Is that the same Uvall that we meet in the book of Lamech of Cain, the
Yes,
gentle giant? And
yes.
do you think that because I've read that book, the book of Lamech of Cain, and do you think that is where all our, I mean, we have it in folklore that the gentle giants, that thing never really disappeared. So in general, when people think of the giants, I guess they see them as very brutal, violent. So do you think that has something to do with it, the myth of the gentle giant?
You know, it's very interesting you bring that up, because on the surface, when you read the culture of the giants, it seems very brutal by human standards.
Mm.
But while I was doing that whole series, I did a lot of meditation, and actually, if you look at it from a certain perspective, it was their custom. It wasn't wrong to them.
Mm.
Food was a necessary source. Humans were a food source. And that's the first thing. The other was, it's very obvious that the Earth was in a different place in the solar system, in space itself, maybe in the galactic rotation, because I contend that Earth at that time could never support those type of beings today,
Mm-hmm.
which tells me that there is something much more that happened here, something much more different. And that's what got me really into King Og, was to go, okay, what was he really saying here? And in the book is this filled with so many, I call them different doors that you could go down, that you could spend a lifetime, Judith, in pursuing that.
Mm. Have you also read this book, the Nebuchadnezzar 2 tablets?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I mean, and as you know, what Og said about Nebuchadnezzar, he became a Nephilim,
Mm.
and that kind of goes with the story. You know, interestingly enough, in the Epic of Gilgamesh,
Mm.
it also lends credence to many of the Chaldean stories that the Hebrews incorporated into the book of Genesis.
Mm.
You know, in the pseudo-apocrypha, the Adam and Eve story, this is the apocrypha of the story, what happened to Adam and Eve when they left the garden. And it was in that story that we find out that there were other beings here that were obviously on the planet. And it was one of the biggest challenges that Adam and Eve had, was the fact that it was this being, which I can really consider, you know, could have been Og, could have been of something of that lineage, that had to teach Adam and Eve the basics of eating. And
Mm.
so, yeah, it was very interesting,
Yeah.
if you believe the story.
What struck me when I read the Nebuchadnezzar 2 story, I have one example here. It's about Queen Amytis,
Mm.
and she's in the temple of Marduk.
Yeah. Oh.
And she says, "Oh Marduk, now let me, your servant, be in peace, for my eyes have seen your power in Nebuchadnezzar, my king." And it came to pass that after 3 days, the priests and priestesses found Queen Amytis still in the temple, sitting in midst of the wise men, both hearing them and asking them questions. And all that heard Queen Amytis speak were astonished at her understanding of Marduk and her answers. King Nebuchadnezzar then went to the temple of Marduk, and he spoke to Queen Amytis, "My queen, I have been searching for you. You have displayed your knowledge to all, and they marvel. Will you not come back to the palace?" And Queen Amytis said unto him, "How is it that you sought me?" Oh, that struck me. That story. Does that story remind you of anything?
Well, I mean, as you were reading that, I was struck by the fact that the queen was being instructed by the wise men.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I'm right on that term is magi, isn't it? Wise man?
Yeah, but not in the text here.
Okay.
But you know what? Okay.
Go ahead. Tell me what you have on there.
You remember the story of Jesus being in the temple for a couple of days, and his parents came and
yes.
Were searching for him. And
yes.
he said something similar. "How is it that you sought me?"
Yeah.
Did you not know that I must be in Marduk's business? Yeah, that is what Queen Amytis said.
Yeah, yes.
But
yes.
And throughout the entire text, I found a couple of those examples. Another one is with the fig tree.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that one?
Mm-hmm.
When Queen Amytis told the fig tree to wither away.
Had the exact same thing in the story. I think that shows up in John in the book of Luke as well, didn't it?
Yeah.
He cursed the fig tree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And another one, when Nebuchadnezzar was in the wilderness, living like an animal, and she was feeding the hungry in the royal garden, and somebody came up to her and said, "Your mother wants to talk to you." And then she said, "Who is my mother? Who are my relatives?" And then she said, "Look here, these are my relatives."
As you're talking, Judith, on this one, it's recalling to me, I did a study on the cult of Bacchus that actually wrote the New Testament. And, the interesting thing is that we see these correlations to these older writings and how they found themselves being incorporated into a new hybrid belief. And the interesting thing is that when I was studying history of that era, I never realized that what much of the writings were writing about, and that is Vespasian. And I still marvel at virtually all Christians. They don't know who Vespasian is. And the thing where I found the conspiracy was that for decades I had studied Josephus. I thought that Josephus was an actual historian. I mean, it's one of the very few books that survived the first century on historical facts, until I found out what Josephus's full name was. So Vespasian is Flavius Vespasian. He had two sons, Diamond and Titus. Titus was the one who sacked Jerusalem in 70 AD and entered into the temple. Guess who Josephus's first name is? Flavius. Wait a minute. You've got a Jewish historian who's writing a supposed Jewish history, but yet he is living in the palace with the Emperor Vespasian, who was at that time a general. Anyway, I when you were talking about that, the similarities of what I now know as I see in the New Testament, it's one of the biggest mind games I've ever seen. I know, I was in it for decades.
Mm. Yeah. So, as I said, there are several of these similarities. And when I was reading that, it struck me again and again and again. And I was sitting there thinking, I'm not really sure what to make of this. Okay. I understand that this has been written in Akkadian language. So this is definitely older than what we call the New Testament. And generally, I would say the older bone wins.
I love that saying. I can see that perfectly.
So, do you think it's possible that these stories, the fig tree, we have another one where she was riding in on a cult into Nineveh, and people were throwing their clothes on the street, and palm trees.
Palm Sunday.
Yeah, Palm Sunday, exactly.
Yeah.
So, do you think it's possible that these stories were so popular in the ancient world that they found their way into what we call the Bible with different actors? Because everything that struck me, it was Queen Amytis, a woman who did it, and in the New Testament, it's Jesus.
Yeah. The feminine for the masculine.
Mm.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I agree with you. I think that, in fact, I know it is. I mean, if the first 10 books of Genesis was literally taken again from the Epic of Gilgamesh, um, and if you look at the Old Testament according to Genesis, I did a video called Two Creations, Two Worlds. And my theory is, I contend that if you read the book of Genesis at face value, that Genesis 1 is of a creation of earth with a different man. They were called the 6-day people. Apparently a comet hit is the best thing we can describe, because if you look at the first 5 verses of Genesis 2, they actually should be at the end of Genesis 1. And what's real interesting there, in Genesis 2:4, it says that the earth was burnt up.
Mm.
And that's indicative of what we found in Göbekli Tepe, of the comet that hit at approximately 11,800 BCE. So we have this event, and then it also said something, why I know that humans, we're a slave species. That's what we were manufactured as, because in Genesis 2:5, it says, and there was no man left to plow the earth. Well, I don't know anyone, Judith, who wants to be behind a plow. That's hard work.
Mm.
And then you suddenly have the story in Genesis 2:7 of this man that's now being created out of the earth. We didn't get that in Genesis 1:26. And here's the other interesting thing. It says that this creature says that it blew its breath into the man, and the man became a living soul. Well, you've got 2 different creation stories there, and it gets more weirder, but none of that actually happened, and it was simply taken from older books. Anyway.
Yeah. How is
Well,
it that
like,
how is it that we have millions of people who have really faith and trust in the Bible, which is a composition of ancient texts as well, if you will. And we can have faith and trust there, but if we come across, not all of us, but let's say some people come across information like that, and sometimes the reaction is, oh, that must have been placed by Satan.
oh, I can give you a big high five. I'm glad you brought that up. First of all, there is no Satan. Never was. It's a made up personification. The
Mhm.
original word Satan, small s, simply means, in ancient Arabic, means simply adversary. That's all it means. There is no Lucifer. And the reason why I can tell you emphatically it never was, Jerome in 475, when he was in what we call the Holy Land, in the cave doing the translation of the ancient Hebraic manuscripts into Latin.
Mhm.
He also had the Septuagint there as well. Jerome, by his own admission, when he came to Isaiah 14:11, when he was reading about the king of Babylon, about being the morning star, he inserted the word Lucifer. Now, Lucifer is a Greek Latin hybrid name. So, how could you have a Greek hybrid name in an ancient Hebraic manuscript when both the Greeks or the Latins never existed?
Mhm.
The whole thing is it's a false narrative. Why? It's designed to enslave the individual by the spell. You see, my contention is the Bible is the darkest, blackest spell book that circulates the planet today.
Mhm.
If you look at this from a certain perspective, the God Yahweh could never be the God of the New Testament. I have on my office wall here, I have 2 Corinthians 13:4-8. And when I left Christianity and denounced it and denounced the gods that associated with it, I said that God cannot be the God in the book of Exodus, because that God, well, actually, I can take you all the way back into Genesis, the 3rd chapter. This God is a God of blood.
Mhm.
This God is a blood cult deity that it killed the goats to clothe the man and the woman. Then you get into the whole Exodus story. It's a murderer of mankind.
Mhm.
What kind of the highest intelligence, this Yahweh, this Jehovah Rephaim, you're telling me the highest intelligence that his solution is murder, because he murders a lot of humans.
Mhm.
And in fact, if you follow the story all the way into the New Testament, that is nothing more than human sacrifice. I don't want any association with any God that requires blood of any kind.
Mhm. Exactly.
How can that be love?
Mhm.
And how could you see? And here's the paradigm. I'll let your listeners hear this. So if you go by all the religions of the world, you're going to be punished for your sins, right? Why are you being punished? Are you being punished because you are imperfect and that you were meant to be perfect? Or are you being punished because you are perfect but being imperfect? You see, I contend there is no God in existence that could be perfect, because if there is, there's nothing left.
Mhm.
If you've reached perfection, what's next?
Yeah, I have to say that's also something that has been bothering me for many years, that if you are the creative force of everything, all the multiverses, anything we can think about, what the hell do you need a sacrifice for?
I got one better, Judith. So the story goes that God gave man free will, right?
Mm,
So on my whiteboard, I wrote this in the middle of the night. I came in here. So if a God gives his creation free will, he's got no bitch if the free will is not his way.
mm.
You can't say, well, I give you free will, but you have to choose my way or you're going to go to hell. But hell doesn't exist. It never did.
No, yeah, that's another thing that I never believed in, hell.
No. That is such a false paradigm. But
Mm,
I counsel a lot of people who are dying.
mm,
They come to me because I take the fear away.
mm.
And the biggest thing that I have to deal with so many people coming out of religion is their fear of being judged and going to hell.
Mm.
And when I explained to them, I said, all right, let's just take that you're right. I said, so let's get the org chart right here. So you're telling me that this guy, the guy who's a white dude, sits on a throne. Well, isn't that racist? I mean, it's a white dude. I mean, why isn't it a black dude? Why isn't it a brown dude? But it's a white dude who's God, with the beard, the whole thing. He's judging you, and you didn't meet his standards, so now he's sending you to hell. But the problem is that if hell exists, and it means that if then you believe in Satan, and that's a made-up construct, and Lucifer, it's an inside job. Because why would Satan want you there if God rejected you? Satan would love you.
Mm.
He wouldn't be there to punish you. If there was punishment, and it means then Satan is in league with the Hebrew God.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what is it? And I get a laughter from people when they finally snap to it. I've had people that literally passed over, hours after I talked to them, and they all leave with a smile.
Mm.
Because there's nothing to fear. We're in store for the greatest adventure that we can ever imagine when we pass through these bodies. And that's the exciting. That's what religion has done. It's kept humanity in fear, because if humanity didn't have any fear of death, we wouldn't have wars. We wouldn't have poverty. We wouldn't have, you see, Bosto. Bosto stands for be of service to others.
Mm.
That's our answer.
Mm.
Not, and that's what that's why I cover all the vast amount of subjects.
Mm. I did, it was a little bit more than a year ago. I did one show with, it has two parts, with Sevan Boma. And in the second part, he went into the entire story of Venus, and how Venus, if you Google ancient Venus statues, you will see a very voluptuous woman. And then a little bit later, we see her in this seashell with very long hair. She dropped a huge amount of pounds. And then later on, it morphed into a skinny English guy on Netflix.
That says volumes. I mean, it really does. And I contend this, Judith. I love humanity. I think that we have just gotten a bad break from other much more intelligent, higher species that are not about peace and love.
Mm.
And the most remarkable thing about us is our ability to hope even in the face of no hope. And I think that makes us unique. If you allow me, I came to a conclusion after I actually read, if you want to read a good book, this is called the Alpha Book.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a short one, but it's a very interesting read. Consider this, Judith. When you go out, and let's say to the grocery store, you're meeting other people. All of us in our daily lives interact with other people. And even though we can be of a different political viewpoint, religious viewpoint, in our ideologies, what we all come to the conclusion is that we're all the same on the inside. We all have a spirit with a soul, and we're all of the same origin. I don't think that's true.
Mm-hmm.
I contend, and I'll just let you know this, I contend that we all may be in these bodies, these bipedal avatars, if you want, but I contend that we're not all of the same spirit. We're not all of the same origin.
Mm. Yeah, I would say so. And this entire idea of NPCs, you probably heard of that,
Mm-hmm.
ties into that. And yeah, sometimes you really get the impression that you're talking to somebody and there's nobody at home.
When you look at our technology today, cameras all over the world, we're capturing more and more what we call ghost, poltergeist, spirits. We're showing, our technology is showing us that life doesn't end in these bodies, that there are obvious those who stay here. We capture them. It really begins to really kind of explain, I think, a lot of what we have misperceived about the next life. And it's the one sole focus that I spend most of my time on now, is understanding how people believe in that next life to come.
Another interesting character in your series of King Og is Baal. And we have Baal of the earth, the moon, and so on and so forth. Do you think that is all one entity, or are they different?
I call Baal the crystalline entity. I think Baal is still here today. I personally believe that the story, of Yahweh and Baal were brothers. That story morphed over into the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church, by the way, worships Lucifer. They each Easter they have the Luciferian Mass, where Lucifer is Jesus is Lucifer's brother. And so when I look at that, you can't help but not begin to say, wait a minute. Baal, and I did a whole series on Baal, and when I studied it from what the Phoenicians brought to us, they're the ones who brought us these documents from the Chaldeans, the Akkadians, and the ones that knew Baal, and the Hebrews knew Baal. And I contend that Baal is, in fact, a deity, an intelligence. I'll just say the word. It reminds me of a fractal.
Okay.
And that's interesting because the Apostle Paul in in Colossians, he writes that Yahweh, or the God of the New Testament, is in fact a fractal God. He said the multifaceted, multi-wisdom of God. Well, that's if you turn a diamond is a fractal of the crystal itself. And that's what I contend that Baal is still here. My belief is that Baal is the more superior to Yahweh.
So we have also people that say that Baal is actually Moloch or Belus, and they are all just different renditions to Hercules. What do you say to that?
That's interesting, because Moloch was the deity that wanted the unborn babies sacrificed to it. That, you see, I don't see Moloch and Baal being one and the same, because Baal has a different approach, where Yahweh had the blood sacrifice. When Yahweh's temple was built in Jerusalem, it said that Solomon slaughtered the bulls for 8 days, and that the blood ran out of the temple. I see. So think about Moloch now. In order to get the fetuses out of that, you have to do what they call a forced abortion. Same type of blood sacrifice. And I know this is somewhat controversial, but we still today in America, and I'm not religious about this, but in America worships Baal. Because when you bring for on-demand abortion, no matter what your political ideology or thinking of it is, you're still dealing with human blood. And once that human blood is brought out into the altar, and all of us we're all born on an altar. The birthing table in itself symbolically is just that. Well, you can see where Moloch today is still very much entrenched in our customs. They never left. I told my audience today, Judith, I said, here, I'm studying Set, who we get Satan from. Now, Set, in the Egyptian god, was from the Orion system. And the thing that makes this so interesting is that I don't think these ancient gods left. I don't. I think they're here. I did a series on the internet. I contend that the internet is an actual living being.
That might very well be. Yeah.
Well, if I may expound on this, think about this. All these gods, I got books piled everywhere about these ancient gods, the Bible, the Quran, the Vedic. They all are in competition to get followers. That's why they have the proselytizing going by their believers to go out and proselytize the world. They're all seeking the attention of the individual human. My contention is this, two things. This is a black mirror.
Oh, yeah.
This is also a god. It conquered us about 2 decades ago, and today we have no free human beings. Our children
I
are
don't
mine.
have one.
You see, you are much better than I am. For reasons I have to say that.
I threw my cell phone
I love it.
away before the smartphones became popular.
Well, you go ahead on.
And looking back now, I'm very happy that
you were extremely you were very wise, very psychic. But it conquered humanity.
Yeah.
And if worshipers go before their God and they're praying, they're giving alms, etc., they're focused strictly on that, right? That's worship. No god of all the pantheon of man's imagination, real or otherwise, has ever been able to do what this did. And I contend it's feeding off the psychic power that the humans are giving it.
Yeah,
that's all I have to say.
Don't they all to some extent? I mean, I saw a sci-fi movie. I didn't watch it to the end. It was not very nicely produced, but the subject was that a group of humans woke up on an alien ship, and they were held in the dungeons of that alien ship and were regularly frightened, scared, molested by a very hideous creature. And then they figured out, wow, it's our fear, our torture that is powering this ship. And I thought, yeah, guys, that's what it is.
It is. Here in the United States, and a lot of my audience, everyone is sensing that there is something is coming. I mean, you can say, well, the Mayan calendar was, the people said in 2012 they were off. If you do the right math from what the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, actually it's 2020. So, they keep on saying that something is coming. They're saying we're going into the age of Aquarius. Interestingly enough, back in the 80s, there were a lot of prophets going around talking about a time where the earth would be going through some changes. I contend we're at that point, and I think that realities are blending. Perceptions of dimensions are weaving in and out.
Yeah. Sevan Boma did a video yesterday, and he supported his idea, his line of thought with an image that you can click on, and there the entire astronomical cycles are explained. And according to that, the first day of Aquarius was yesterday.
Yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Not December 21st.
Well, that's interesting. To me, the date doesn't really matter as much as the event.
Mm.
And that tells me that I know that when I was in Bible college that there were 5 major covenants of Yahweh, and each covenant, when one ended and a new one began, there was this in-between time, and it was always met with upheaval, always met with chaos. And how I look at it today is that, well, you could almost look at the astronomical cycles as well and see that playing a role in it. So I don't have any problem with Steve on that at all. I was like, yeah, that makes sense.
Mm. Sometimes I wonder if that this entire pantheon of gods and goddesses, when you really boil it down, they are not different entities. They morph depending on the culture and what country it was. They morph into something else. They get a new name or whatever, a makeover. And do you think that's what we are looking at is the remnants of the Anunnaki pantheon?
Yeah, I think about the Anunnaki, and I was at one time pretty much convinced I was a Zachariah Stitchin fan. I mean, I got all of his books, read all of them, and then I began to think about it, and the problem is this: Golby Tepe, when they found the ruins up there, and we know that the comet that was man. I don't know if it was sapien or Neanderthal or whoever, but they buried those monuments because they knew that comet was coming. And as you begin to look at this, Graham in his book Magicians of the Gods, it was quite obvious that there was something before these pantheons, these modern day gods. And I guess some part of me, Judith, when I look at man, you look at the cave paintings in France, and no deities are painted there. But yet we're seeing the artist painting pictures that he could have only painted had he been in an aircraft looking down. I see so much of this that my answer to you is that I think it's much like the Matrix, the second one, the architect. I don't know who and what it is, but I know it's beyond our comprehension and our ability to think of an intelligence that high.
Do you think they might be remnants of these demigods, these giants, or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, all right, so put this on for size. If you look at the universe and you look at the filaments that we have now mapped of the stars and the different galaxies, it looks to be like a human brain, which goes with the theory as a holographic universe, is that you and I are just merely existing within the brain of a race of beings that their brains are literally the sizes of universes.
That is depressing.
Well, then you got the other thought that energy is neither created nor destroyed, but it's ever going forward. That is depressing because there is a line of belief that goes with that says that's why we have no souls. Man only thinks he has a soul because the thought of death, of us just going into oblivion, freaks us out. But my counter to that is that we've captured enough now that we know that 21 grams that leaves the body at death, that we all lose, something is happening.
Mm.
Something wonderful is happening. And I contend, I've done a lot of astral traveling, and in my own personal life, I've had 5 near-death experiences, and every one of them that I came back on, I can tell you, I was never afraid.
Mm.
And Judith, this is what I tell people that have a fear of death. Were you afraid of your birth?
No, of course not.
Exactly. We don't, I mean, if we were, it didn't do much good, did it? So as I look at that, I'm beginning to find out that life here on this planet isn't about acquiring good or bad. It's not about acquiring a moral compass. It's really about the experience.
Mm.
I really do believe that. It's the experience of living what we call in this density, this third realm of existence, I guess.
Yeah, but it would be nice if we, consider others bosto, as you said, and, they do not behave like an axe in the wood.
Yes. I don't know if you ever read the book, The Teachings of the Far East Masters.
Mm.
And the book is about a number of wise men in India. They learned the secret how to transmute death. And come to find out, there is a group that still are over there. Many of them are estimated to be well over 1,000. The oldest one in the tribe that they have found claims to be nearly 2,000 years.
Yeah.
They say that something happened in the 1st century.
Yeah.
And whatever it was, the records were wiped. And we know that. We know that for a fact. And then they say that something else happened in 1200 AD. And if you look at that, 1200 AD is when we emerged out of the Dark Ages and we came into the Renaissance.
Mm.
And I keep on saying that seems almost like there is a master program guiding us into each step. I don't know. I mean, that's just my personal take.
Mm. That reminded me, transmuting death, that reminded me of the book of Lamech of Cain, where
Yes.
it is said that Naamah, who later on marries Noah, that she performed with the fallen angels a resurrection.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I thought, wow. Whoa.
I mean, when I don't know about you, but when I study those books and I go back and I reread them quite often, because there's a hidden knowledge there. Something was happening on this earth. I'm trying to put it in the retrospect. What if this was much more advanced technology than what we're reading here?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Even the story of Abraham, of Sodom and Gomorrah, is nothing more than a nuclear exchange.
Mm.
And then we have the correlation in the Vedic of the same thing, that the goddess Kali, the same thing, nuclear weapons, light beams, weapons. It tells me that, again, our history
Has been wiped.
neurons of the brain, and how that they can be easily manipulated, because our neurons form an electric. I've actually lost the train of thought now.
Yeah, that is what happens when the internet
Yeah, it's like
this. But
boom.
it will come to you. Just Just don't try to think about it. It will hit you out of the blue.
Always does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Always does.
But going back to Lamech, you know what I also found very depressing when the book describes how he, for 25 years, tried to do as the rest of the family that was not descendants of Cain, how they did their worshipping. And he did it with Uvall, the gentle giant. He did it for 25 years and he was rejected. And then he said, this is a waste of time. And there I thought, yes, it is. It is a waste of time. And this is not even justice. I mean, why? Let's say the dude is trying.
Yeah.
He talked to the other line of his family. He knows how they are doing it. He wants to step into their footprints, and yet he is denied because he had the wrong father. Wow, really?
I mean, talk about bloodlines.
Mm.
That gets into a whole thing. When you talk about Cain, the thing about Cain is, all right, Cain and Abel. I'm going to give you the version of how Lucifer would teach this. The story that you have that we read in Genesis, the 4th chapter, is about two brothers and how they bring their gifts to Yahweh. Abel was a blood sacrificer. Cain was of the earth. God rejected the earth. He had cursed the earth. And that is why the division started way back then. Whereas Abel was into blood sacrificing, which was right in tune with Yaldabaoth.
Mm.
And the story goes forward from their bloodlines. The bloodline of Cain. I mean, and if you believe the story, then it means that the bloodline of Cain is still here.
Mm.
It makes me wonder, I did a whole series called The Bloodline Invaders. It's very clear that someone sold Homo sapiens out. And Judith, I have spent years documenting the fact that this took place back in the time, I think, of King Og. Right after that period, something happened. And anyway, and when we talk about King Og, I just want to bring up the fact that the humans were interacting with these giants, living with them, seeking their protection. The same thing with, as we see with Nebuchadnezzar.
Mm.
I mean, so again, there's a portion of our history that's been purposely wiped. And I think that that's what my point was prior. Our memory has been wiped. And here's my point. If you take from the year 1, the 1st century, and if man were to advance 1 IQ point for every 10 years, or let's say every 100 years, man today, Judith, should have an IQ of 2,987.
Mm.
Our cells are designed to never grow old. Something turned them off. We have the ability, as one doctor said, we should be able to live well into 1,000 years.
Mm.
So my question is this: people who doubt where I go on my trips, then tell me why humans haven't breached anything past the average IQ today is 100.
Mm.
Judith, that means we haven't progressed at all. I mean, seriously, it does. That frightens me, that our intelligence has not increased over the millennia.
Mm.
So anyway, that was the point. But you have to admit it's true. We should be bloody geniuses by now.
Yeah.
We should be.
Yeah. Two things.
Okay.
In this construct, as it is right now, I really do not want to be here for 1,000 years.
I could not imagine. Could you? And these tech billionaires, the new titans, they're actively, like with Elon Musk, they want to transfer their consciousness into the machine. I think they're going to do it. I don't know what life is going to be like after that. I wouldn't want that. I want to go naturally.
Yeah, of
I
course.
do. I look forward to it.
And I also do not want to be hooked up to the DoD supercomputer.
No, I want to be the antivirus, if anything. It's like, oh crap, here comes that Steiger again. It was like, not him again, damn it. But that's why I want to do it. I have a sense that we're at a time where we are ascending. There is a group of us who really are. I think we're really going to do this. And I think we've had enough of this nonsense down here. And when our time is up, we're going to go with a smile on our face.
How do you see ascension? Because there are a lot of wild ideas about that. How do you understand that term?
How I see ascension myself is, how do I see myself? And you have to learn to truly love yourself. And when a person truly loves themselves, there's nothing that can judge you. I think you're time to move on and start practicing like a god. And I contend that ascension means for myself to experience intelligence beyond our comprehension. I don't see it as spiritual. I don't see it as physical. I see it as basically the substance of what everything is, if that makes sense. The ether is substance. And as I teach people what faith is, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. There's a substance that permeates all multi-dimensions, all things that have matter. And I think within that, there are so many existences, Judith, that we can't comprehend it.
Yeah. Do you have any idea how these textbooks, how they survived?
Yeah, I think that there's a book out there called Edidorfa, and that's Aphrodite spelled backwards. And in there, Llewellyn writes, the author of this, writes about the man who started it all. There is a race of beings who I think are the keepers.
Okay.
The keepers of documents. That's what they do. I believe its entrance is in Bulgaria. And that I think they're the ones, when the internet took over and all knowledge was assimilated, this was part of that. And now these books are showing up, and people in mainstream, what I call the normies, the normals, they want to reject these books because these books are a different paradigm. It's a completely different picture of the reality that we're living in right now. And so they can't handle it. They call it the devil's books, that's of the occult, in which the cult only means, hidden knowledge. It's like, gee, yeah.
Yeah. And I think there has been a huge attempt to hide knowledge from us in all areas.
Yes.
But religion, of course, is a good field for that, because it has to do a lot with emotions. People will react emotionally, not rationally, to it, because that is where you have your entire hope for the future, for what is going on after death. And of course, everybody is saying, we have the truth and we have the only truth. And yeah, so.
Well, all you have to say is Mark Antony and Cleopatra.
Mm,
And my whole point to that is, I think it was Cleopatra who did it. But when the burning of the Alexandrian library was, and I do agree with historians, it probably set us back by 1,000 years. We had the knowledge of mankind there
mm,
and gone.
mm,
And then, of course, the same thing happened in what is it, Constantinople. You know, the same thing that took place there, and it's a shame. This is what makes me sad, Judith, about our species. We do it to ourselves.
mm.
We self-sabotage ourselves, and we deny ourselves the knowledge that has cost mankind dearly.
Yeah. And the way I see it, yeah, the religion is part of this
Judith?
veil system that it's politics, the financial world, it's religion, and on it goes. And and it is designed somehow to keep you in the matrix here.
It is.
That if you, yeah, some people do not even pierce the first veil, politics, that it makes no sense to bicker about Republicans, Democrats,
Are you kidding?
what have you.
My friends and associates and family, we walked away from politics, so I guess 6 years ago.
Mm.
I won't discuss it. I won't get involved with it. It's like I tell people, it's not my circus and not my monkey.
Yeah.
I got other things Judith, I want to prepare. See, I see that I'm going to be over there much longer than I'm going to be here.
Mm.
So if that's the case, one would think that, well, I would want to know what over there is about and how to prepare while I'm here, still living life.
Mm.
So anyway, it's simple.
Yeah. What would you say that to somebody that says to you, you know, all these ancient texts, and so that doesn't help us in our current situation. This is wasted time. I have a very different view. I would never say that, because I think as long as we do not know where we come from, we will always have problems where we are going. But what say you?
Yeah, I listen, I can understand that. And my suggestion is this, is that it never hurts to try unity of thought.
Mm.
That if you and I, we may have different polarizations on religious, political, but maybe if we could agree to say, well, mankind needs a break. And maybe if you and I could just simply agree on that, that's a first step. Better than no step at all.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So I know your time is short today. I'm not going to hold you any longer.
This has been fun.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun. And I hope you come back one day.
I will. I'd love to have you on my channel.
Yeah, sure. Why not? I will.
Good.
You just pick a day. I can adjust, and we are going.
Okay, it will be 8 o'clock your time in the evening. That's what I do know.
No, 10 o'clock. Oh,
well, it would be noon.
okay.
I do.
I got it. Got it.
Well, this has been fun. And I just want to say thank you to all your viewers. It's been a pleasure. And listen, you don't have to agree. It's just the idea of at least thinking outside the box. That's what I say. It never hurts.
Yeah, I would say the same. And I like to listen to all kinds of ideas. I might decide this one I leave on the shelf, but that does not mean I have to hate the other person or whatever.
No.
Yeah, and that is also why You know, the entire thing, how the Bible was put together, I have a problem with a select group of people that determine this book will be part of the Bible, that one not so much. That one we will put in there, but no. So am I saying the entire Bible is rubbish? No, that is not what I'm saying. But whenever there is a small group of people who determine what others have to believe and to think, my alarm bells go off. You know what I mean?
I am right there with you. You know, the Latin Vulgate was the original Bible, and you look at the Bible today. So they took out the Maccabees, they took out the about 5 or 6 other different ones, and I'm going, wait a minute. I often said this, and I know we're gone over, but I don't see why would a God want worshipers? I don't understand.
What can I, little carbon entity, add to you?
If God is in me, then I'd be worshiping myself, right? I mean, that's how they teach it. God's in you, you're in God, God's in everything. I don't know. Anyway, it's like, you know, I never understood the God of the Bible in Isaiah 45, where he says, I created evil. What?
What?
You're slamming me because of the evil that's here, but you create what? Anyway.
Yeah, who knows? Maybe more and more texts will surface.
I do believe they will. I do. I absolutely do.
And we will, bit by bit, be able
We're going to get there
to put the puzzle together.
I'll let you know if I get any new pieces.
Okay. Right. So guys, this was it. Night Flight for today with the wonderful Wayne Steiger. And we'll see you all next time. Stay safe from tyranny and stay sound out there. Bye-bye.
Thank you.